That walk is quite famous. You may have seen reels or TikToks of it. Vladimir Putin first made that walk in the year 2000. He took charge as president of Russia. Today, he made the same walk again. Through the narrow staircase, through the gilded corridor, and a line of oligarchs and government officials. It's not just a presidential inauguration, it is a statement of authority. It's Putin's way of saying, I am the boss. He's begun his 5th term as the Russian president. It's a 6-year term, so Putin will be in office until 2030. Only one person has ruled Russia longer than him, and that's Joseph Stalin. But this term is unlike his previous ones because Russia is now at war. So all eyes were on his inaugural address. What message would Putin send to the West? He said he's ready for dialogue, but only as equals.
The dialogue, including on issues of security and strategic stability, is possible, but not from a position of force. Without any arrogance, snobbishness, feeling of one's own exclusiveness, but only as equals, respecting each other's interests. Together with our partners in Eurasian integration, with other sovereign centers of development, we will continue to work on forming a multipolar world order, an equal and indivisible security system.
Putin is more confident now. The tide of the war is turning and Western resolve is weakening. But we are not just focusing on the Ukraine war. We're looking at Putin's overall legacy. He's ruled Russia for nearly a quarter of a century, sometimes as prime minister, sometimes as president. So when the history books are written, how will he be remembered? As a villain, as the West calls him, or a hero of Russia? I'm afraid the answer is not so black and white. There are 3 indisputable facts about Putin's rule, things that will shape his legacy. Number 1, he put Russia back on the map. After the Cold War, no one expected this. Russia's economy and society were broken. In 1998, they defaulted on their debt, meaning they did not have money to pay back their loans. And politically, Moscow was rudderless. Most people assumed that NATO would swallow up Russia, that a great power would become a Western ally, much like Britain or Germany. But Putin had other plans. He did not antagonize the West. Instead, he used the West to stabilize Russia's economy. He sold gas and oil to Europe. He got investments from the US and expanded relations in Asia and Africa. As Russia grew, Putin became more confident. He started defying the West. In 2008, he fought a war against Georgia. Back then, Georgia was eyeing a NATO membership. In 2014, he attacked another NATO candidate, Ukraine. He managed to snatch Crimea away from them. And in 2022, he attacked Ukraine again. With all these moves, Putin's goal was the same: to tell the West, I'm not a pushover. Another example is that of Syria. In 2015, he decided to support Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in the civil war. Again, it was a timely move. Assad now has the upper hand in Syria, and Putin has a reliable ally in West Asia. Factor number 2, democratic backsliding. It's an undeniable legacy of Putin's. In the year 2000, he won the election with 53% of the votes. This year, he got 87% of the votes, and no one is buying it. His rivals end up persecuted or dead, and his critics end up jailed or poisoned. The situation is very different from what Putin described in 2000. Back then, he said Russia was a modern democratic state. Today, Russia is modern, but hardly anyone would call it democratic. And finally, the third factor, realigning Russia's destiny. Around 75% of Russia's territory is located in Asia. Yet, Moscow was always looking west, towards Europe. Whether it was culture, trade, alliances, or even political threats, Russia was always obsessed with Europe. But Vladimir Putin changed that. He has built a close partnership with China. He's cemented relations with India, and he's also made inroads into West Asia. Today, Russia's biggest markets and partners are in the East. Meanwhile, the West is enemy number 1. I know stranger things have happened, but after the events of the last decade, it's hard to see Russia back in the Western fold. Chances are that chapter is closed, which brings us to Putin's future. He's 71 years old. He will be 77 by the time his term ends. And legally, he can run again. Putin is a great example of leaders making a difference. But honestly, that's also a problem for Russia. Will Putin's successor be as feisty as him? Will he or she be able to hold the country together like Putin has? Or will Russia's ambitions disappear with Vladimir Putin? Perhaps questions for another time. But in conclusion, let me say this. Putin will probably be remembered as one of the most influential figures of this century. Controversial and ruthless, yes, but also influential.